Hello friends, I'm Rosa, welcome to the channel. Today we're gonna talk about books that are good to read when you're in a reading slump. So first of all, I want to say, like, if you happen to be in a reading slump, usually reading your favorites would be my first advice. Like rereading a book that you really love that made you feel a lot of things. But if you're not feeling like reading your favorite book either, first of all, I'm so sorry. But also, I got 10 books I want to talk about today, so 10 books that are fast-paced, that have twists and turns that'll keep you on your toes. And these 10 books are also sort of different genres, mostly young adult. There's a couple of, I think there's at least one new adult in there, one adult book as well, and one middle grade. I keep looking down here because my stack of books is right next to me, so there should be a little bit of everything in this video, but we're gonna talk a little bit about the synopses, the stories in these, and hopefully one of them will actually sound interesting to you. So let's cross our fingers and toes, hope for the best. Anyway, let's get started. So I want to start with a graphic novel that I know literally every reader, almost every reader on the planet has read by now, but I would highly recommend reading Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, because not only is this graphic novel so cute and it makes you feel fuzzy and the characters are so lovable. It's fast-paced, it's a graphic novel, it'll let you ease into reading if you've been out of it for a while. But in this book we follow Nick and Charlie, who are kind of almost opposites but happen to have a lot in common anyway. Charlie is a very shy guy. He's kind of introverted, he's a little bit nervous, and he's very into music as well. And he's also gay, so it's kind of like well known at his school that he's gay by now, even though he didn't come out on his own terms, and you know, but it's a well-known fact by now. And then we have Nick, who is one of the popular guys. He is a bit of a golden retriever, if you get what I mean. He's also a jock, he's on the rugby team. And so the book is basically about these two guys meeting each other, becoming friends, seeing what this friendship can turn into. So it's kind of a coming of age story as well as a coming out story, and it's warm and fussy, and I would definitely recommend it because something is always happening in Heartstopper. But also I know that the vast majority of you have probably read it by now because it was also turned into a TV show very recently. But I would highly recommend it if you have not read it and you find yourself in a reading slump at some point. So we got ourselves a young adult fantasy, and that is Fable by Adrienne Young. This is also fast-paced. There's some family drama in there, just like a little bit of it. There's not too much world building, but like you still get a distinct feeling of where you are in the book. My point is there's not too many explanations and too much info dumping, so I feel like stuff like that is not good to get through when you're in a reading slump. So because of that, I would highly recommend this. Also because Fable as a character is just very, very lovable. But in this book, we follow our girl, Fable. She's been left on an island 4 years ago by her father, of all people. Just left her on an island, and her goal is basically to get off this island and prove herself to her father, because when he left her, he was basically like, you're not worth enough, kind of. So through her journey and adventure, she kind of has to rely on certain skills that she's gathered from being the daughter of one of the most infamous traders, not a pirate, but in these waters, and also has to rely on some skills that she's learned from her mother as well. So she also teams up with a ship of very interesting characters. One of them is called West. I believe there's a book coming out about him soonish, actually, but there's some relationship stuff in this one too. But it's just a very light, kind of fast-paced read. I feel like this would be very good if you're finding yourself in a reading slump. And like I said, Fable herself as a character is just so lovable. I kind of want to reread them at some point because I sort of miss her, not gonna lie. She's a go-getter. Next up, I have another young adult. This one is horror, and it is House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. So sorry, kind of tripped on that word, I'm so sorry. This is another shorter, kind of fast-paced book with a very interesting set of characters. There's not a whole lot of info dumping in this one. I think it actually takes place in our world, so it's a little bit more of like an urban fantasy, but there are other elements to it as well. You have to guess your way through this book as well because there's, you know, twists and turns and all that, so there's kind of like this looming what the heck going on throughout the whole book. Like, it's just kind of hanging in the air, you know? If you've read the book, you probably know what I'm talking about, but like, I don't know how to put it into words. But it's very interesting. It'll leave you guessing throughout the whole book to see if you can actually figure out what the heck is going on. But we follow three sisters that are very different from each other. So we follow, oh gosh, do I even remember their names? Iris is the one who's basically telling the story. So she's the youngest of the three. And Iris is a very goal-oriented, like she's just she wants to be normal. We'll get to that in a little bit. She just kind of wants to fit in and, you know, go to school, get a job, that sort of thing. Her two big sisters are Vivi and Gray. Vivi is a bit of a rebel, and Gray is like a famous fashion icon. The interesting thing about these three sisters, and also the thing that kind of makes them famous throughout the world, is that when they were younger, their family went to Edinburgh and the girls went missing for a whole month. When they came back, they kind of were different. Like, they were still them, but they were just different. And then throughout the years following that 1 month, they changed, like, looks-wise and stuff. So there's something going on with that. But in present day, Gray, the oldest sister, goes missing. So Iris and Vivi set out to find their missing sister. And there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions involved in this whole missing person ordeal. So it's a very interesting read. I would highly recommend it. It's on the shorter side, it's fast-paced. I think it's only, 292 pages. So you can read it in one sitting, which is what I did. During a readathon, I think even. If you can hear people outside, I apologize. I don't know, they started talking so loudly right after I started recording, so I'm just gonna roll with it. It's fine. So I also want to talk about what I would consider a new adult contemporary romance, and that is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is another fast-paced kind of, well, it's a bit slower than these two behind me and also Heartstopper, but still fast-paced, I would say. It has very lovable characters. That's something that I find very important when you're kind of like not really feeling like picking up a book. I really want the characters to be lovable. And it's also a very hilarious book. I would definitely consider it a rom-com. But in this book, we follow two guys. One is the son of the president in the US. So he's the first son of the US. Yes. And the other one, his name is Alex. The other one is Henry, and he is the Prince of England. Not the Crown Prince, he's just the little brother, but still, he's the Prince of England. And the two have kind of never really gotten along. It's like the media as well set them up to be competitors in some weird way, so like they never really got a chance to get along either. One thing leads to another. They find themselves in a bit of a scandal because at an event, something happens and their PR teams are basically like, let's paint a picture that's different from the one that's being painted right now. Let's make it look like you guys are besties. So it's about them learning to know each other a bit better than from what's been written in the papers about them being competitors and stuff. And it's just a very funny book. I would highly recommend it. Also, if you're not in a reading slump, I would highly recommend any of these books anyway. You know, you should read Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's so cute. And funny. Hilarious. Okay, moving on. PowerPoint scene if you've read the book, by the way. Loved it. Okay, next up we have a bit of a longer book, actually. It's not a thick book, it's just longer than those two. It's another young adult fantasy, and it's Defy the Night by Brigid Kemmerer. So this is a very twisty and turny book. It'll, again, kind of keep you on your toes. There's a lot of guesswork involved in this one. We're dealing with royals as well and rebels, something I find super interesting, and it's also a Robin Hood retelling. So in this book we follow our lead girl who is from a kingdom that is basically struggling a lot because it's overtaken by a sickness that can only be cured by the use of a flower that's not really available, and the rich people in this kingdom are kind of hoarding this flower. They're using too much of it at once while there's nothing left for the not so rich people. So she, along with a rebel friend, are basically trying to make sure that everyone can get a piece of this flower, and they're trying to cure people, or at least like keep the sickness at bay so that they don't succumb to it, I should say. Succumb to it, that's the right term, yes. But there are rumors in the kingdom that this cure isn't actually working, the flowers and stuff, and there are things happening that are completely out of our lead girl's control, one thing happens and she finds herself kind of infiltrating the castle where the royals are, and that's where I'm gonna leave it. This was such a good read. I enjoyed it a lot. I read it with my patrons and I basically binged this a little bit, which wasn't on purpose, but I just couldn't put it down. So I feel like if it does that to me, I'm pretty sure that means it's a very good book if you ever find yourself in a reading slump. Like, it just won't let you put it down, you know? Like, it won't let you stop reading. You just have to continue to read. It's also one of those books where it kind of ends on a cliffhanger now and then at the end of the chapters, which basically prompts you to continue reading because you want to know what happens, and it's good. It's a very good book. Looking forward to the sequel, which is coming out very soon. Next up, we got one that I read recently. It's a middle grade, and it's Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and it's by Rick Riordan. I thought this was a lot of fun while I was reading it, which is why I've put it on this list of books for curing a reading slump or something. It's also fast-paced, it's a middle grade, so it's not too heavy. There's not a whole lot of world building or info dumping because it is a middle grade. You kind of have to keep it on the lighter side. But in this book, we follow Percy, who is... I don't actually know if I'm supposed to say, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows. It's also very easy to figure out, but he's the son of Poseidon and his mom, who's a human, so he's basically a half-god, half-human. He doesn't know that though. He doesn't know until some point in the book. So, but now you know. But a lot of stuff is happening to him that he doesn't really fully understand. Like, he's getting attacked by creatures that are basically like mythological creatures that you find in Greek mythology. And he's finding this very weird, which is understandable. He's also about to be kicked out of boarding school. He's having a hard time with it because he's got ADHD, but he's also dealing with dyslexia, so it's not an easy time for him in school. And he finds himself in trouble a lot, not necessarily because of that, but you know, just the casual mythological creature attacking him now and then. It's causing some issues. So something happens, and him and his mom find themselves on the run, and he ends up at this Camp Half-Blood, where there's a lot of other half-gods, half-humans, children with godparents, casual. And while at this camp, he is basically sent out on a hero's quest to obtain Sáenz's lightning bolt because it's gone missing. It's been stolen. So that's what it's about. Him going off on this quest with his friends Grover and Annabeth, and on the way a lot of stuff happens. And it's fun. It's a ride. I enjoyed it. Although I will say, and I've not done my reading wrap up, I read this in June, so I've just not talked about it yet. Don't understand why the Greek gods have moved to the US. I don't understand, but that's fine. We'll talk about that in the reading wrap up. Next up, I have an adult contemporary romance, definitely a rom-com, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is this is a Raylo fanfic. I thought it was funny. I'm not super into fanfic, if I may be honest. It's just not usually my thing, but having not really watched the new Star Wars movies, I don't necessarily catch up on it so much, so it wasn't really a big deal for me personally, but I just want to put that disclaimer out there. This is, in fact, a Raylo fanfic. It's fun though. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. So in this book, we follow Olive. Yes, Olive, who has a friend who's kind of just hounding Olive about being single and Olive possibly ending up alone and, you know, all that stuff. She's kind of just bothering her like that. So Olive just wants to focus on school. She wants to focus on getting her education. She is a PhD candidate, so it's like, you know, big stuff. It's science stuff. It's heavy, but she really wants to focus on that. And if, you know, love happens, then it happens. But first and foremost, her priority is her education, and that's okay. One day she lies to Olive about actually seeing someone, that she's on a date, but she's just hanging out at her school doing some research. And she sees her friend walking down the hallway and kind of panics and kisses the first guy that she comes across, who happens to be Adam, who's one of their teachers. And he's like known to be terrible. Not a terrible teacher, but like a mean person. He's grumpy. as heck. And of course her friend sees this, so Olive and Adam are kind of, it's actually, I think it's mainly Adam's idea that they start fake dating. And it's a lot of fun. Fake dating is a trope that I enjoy a lot. So it was, are you falling down? No. So it was a lot of fun to read about it here because it's just, I don't know. There's something about fake dating. I don't know what it is, but it's just fun. So next up, I have another contemporary. This is a YA murder mystery, actually, and it's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a bit on the thicker side for a YA. It's about 430 pages, but there's not a whole lot of text on every page, so it's just something worth keeping in mind. It's also fast-paced. It'll kind of leave you having questions a lot and you kind of want to read to get to those answers. And on top of that, it's also, because we follow a girl who is doing a school project, so we have these little inserts after basically every chapter that is like an interview or a phone log. Like if they've had a call, she has the transcript, or it's a production log. It's a lot of things, like a diary kind of log, sort of. Anyway, it's a lot of fun to read. And on top of that, our lead character is also a super charming girl, so she's so funny, she's very smart, and I really enjoyed her being the main character, her telling the story, because she's just so fun. So, we follow Pippa, who goes to a school where 5 years ago, 2 students at the school, one murdered the other and then was found in the woods dead a couple of days later. Yes. But our lead girl is basically convinced that it's a guy who murdered a girl, but she's convinced that this guy didn't actually murder her. And for her school summer project, it's like I don't know what kind of schools do summer projects like this, but okay. Like you have to spend your entire summer on a school project? That sucks. You won't get any time off if you gotta do a school project. Anyway, I don't understand it, but it's fine. But she basically decides for her summer school project that she wants to solve this murder and prove that this guy didn't actually murder that girl, and that's what the book is about. It's funny. Meanwhile, while she's writing the school project, she starts getting letters and notes, and some of her stuff goes missing, and someone is basically trying their best to sabotage her school project and to get her to stop investigating this case. So it's a lot of fun. It's very fast-paced. It's a murder mystery, a YA murder mystery that is not finished after this book, so you'd most definitely want to pick up and read this after. I think this is the sequel. I actually accidentally picked up this one from the shelf instead and then started talking about it, and then I noticed I was holding the wrong book, so I had to start all over. Anyway, that happened. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this. Just wanted to add that. So I got 2 more books. This one definitely being a little bit on the thicker side, but oh my gosh, how I want to recommend this. Like, I want every single person on the planet to read this book, and it is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Not only do I want you to read this, can you even see that? Not only do I want you to read this one, but I want you to read this one and then pick up Crooked Kingdom, because that is actually better than Six of Crows. These are fun, fast-paced, high-stakes, heist, lovable characters, very strong personalities, love, found family, banter, amazing. So we follow 6 people, 6 kind of, well, I suppose they're criminals. They're very different from each other. We have Cass, who is basically the mastermind. We have Inej, who is a bit of an assassin, an acrobat. She's amazing. She's through and through amazing. Anyway, Inej fangirl here. Yeah, moving on. We have Jasper, who's a sharpshooter. We have Wylan, who is a bit of an insecure guy, but he's also their bomber. And then there's Nina, who is the Heartrender, which is kind of difficult to explain, but there's magic in this one. Her ability is basically that she can make your heart stop. She can also pop your blood vessels. It's a bit much, but don't piss her off. And then there's Matthias, who is a guy from the north, who is also a witch hunter. And as you could probably tell, Nina would be considered a witch. So there's a bit of a funny dynamic in this book. But the 6 people, the Six Crows, yes, are sent off on a heist where I have to make sure that I don't mix this up with the first one or with the sequel. Yeah, they have to, I just had to check. There's a map at the end. If there's a map at the end, I know they're at the prison. So, but they have to set off to the north, where Matthias is actually from, to free a prisoner. And that's basically what it's about. I know that sounds super simple. It's not. but that's all I'm gonna say. I want you to read this one because it's funny and I miss it, and now I really want to reread it because I don't exactly remember everything. I think I'm gonna do that soon. I'm in a rereading kind of mood. Yes, it's amazing. Highly recommend. I'm completely covering up A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I'm so sorry. You don't deserve that, Pippa. There you go. And then the last book that I got for you is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. This is a coming of age, a coming out story. It's not a rom-com, it's contemporary romance, and it's young adult, and a very, very fast-paced read. It's very charming, it's very funny, it's very touching as well. We essentially follow two guys who are a bit, I don't want to say full-on opposites, but one basically has the strengths, whereas the other one, like, they make up for each other's strengths and weaknesses is kind of what I want to say. Yeah, a little bit. It's about them meeting, getting to know each other. They've become friends throughout the, like, they've been friends for a long time. It goes from when they're kids to when they're young adults, so you basically see them grow up throughout the book, and it's just about them, yeah, getting to know each other, becoming friends, getting to know themselves, figuring out their place in the world. It also takes place in the 80s, by the way, which I think is an important thing to note. You would understand that when you read the book, but it's an important thing to note, and it's just a very beautiful book that I highly recommend you read. I have the sequel. I haven't read it. I will, eventually, because I really, really fully enjoyed this. Like, I read it so fast. You have a lot of pages that are basically, if I can find one that's, so like, you know that it's not, don't be scared of the thickness of this book. It's not like, it's around 360 pages, but you have a lot of very snappy dialogue, because the two guys, when they talk, are so funny. Their chemistry is like back and forth so quickly. Oh, and there's a lot of letters as well that are a little bit on the shorter side. So my point is that it's a fast-paced story with not like necessarily that much text. Something that I think is important when you're in a reading slump. You don't want to get hit with like info dumps that are just like blocks of text, but there's a lot of like this where it's just like not necessarily a whole lot on each page. This is a good example as well. So it does what it's supposed to with the words that it's got in the book. That sounded so strange. It does what it's supposed to, and it was a very lovely book, so I highly recommend. And those are my recommendations for your next reading slump. If you enjoyed this video, let me know if you want to see one more or a couple. I will write down whenever I come across a book that I think is good for a reading slump or for getting out of a reading slump. Maybe I should do one with books that can basically cause reading slumps. I won't do that. That's weird. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of the books and you enjoyed them or you didn't enjoy them, definitely let me know. If you want to see more videos from me, so both videos like this, but also bookish unboxings and readathons and reading vlogs, TBR videos, reading wrap-ups, you know, all that stuff that we do here on BookTube, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the thumbs up as well. But that's all I got for you guys today. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that it'll help you in your next reading slump. And that's all. So I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye. Oh, you know, you're beautiful.